The Simone Feiler podcast, giving authors a platform. Welcome to the podcast.
Visionary leadership consultant and best-selling author Gary Ryan joins me on the Simone Feiler podcast today. Gary's just recorded and produced his latest audiobook, Yes for Success, with us, and it's available for you to hear at all leading online audiobook retailers, including Audible, as well as Gary's website, orgsthatmatter.com, both of which I highly recommend you check out to live your best life. Welcome, Gary Ryan.
Simone, thank you for having me as a guest on your show.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. You actually contacted me a while ago after you'd written and self-recorded your first audiobook during the COVID lockdowns, aptly called Disruptive Leadership Matters, Lessons for Leaders from the Pandemic, which I also edited and mastered to industry specs, and we got it up online easily. But how did your whole studio experience with Yes for Success differ from self-recording, Gary? And what would you say are the pros and cons of self-recording versus coming into the studio and working with us for the entire project?
For starters, Simone, there are no cons.
Oh,
there was no cons.
Music to my
ears.
all
music to your ears. Honestly, folks, having done the previous process where I recorded it myself, not with all the right equipment, then edited it myself before I sent it to you for you to go and then get it so it was file ready. It just saved me a bunch of time. You were fantastic to work with. The fact that you agreed to let me do a little bit of ad-libbing, which made things trickier for you than me because I knew what I was trying to say and you had no script to follow, but we did that really well. I'm very pleased with how that's come out. But honestly, being in the studio, knowing that it's getting that, because the other thing too is the peace of mind, knowing I don't have to worry about these files. Yes, it's high pressure to get, to nail the recordings and all of that. You didn't make it high pressure. That's just on yourself. And
Were you nervous?
I wasn't nervous so much as at various times you become hyper self-conscious.
Yeah.
And especially when there's that word, there's that word. Oh, how do I say that word again? It's easy to write that word, but I've got to say that word. So there were times when I did fumble on a particular word, but I've trained myself. Like if you had a video of me, you would have noticed me put my feet flat on the ground, settle my bottom back in my seat, and just bring my attention to my feet and my bottom, and then just breathe out longer than I was breathing in for a moment, and then just do it. And I was able to correct fairly quickly.
You did awesome. Like, your narration was outstanding. I think I asked you to begin with. I'm sure you practiced this a lot of times. You did and your ad-libbing was really great as well. It wasn't too hard to work out what what you were saying and how to slot it in there.
Yeah, there was a couple of times when I ad-libbed and I fumbled, and then I decided, actually, no, we won't keep that. And I realized that I was crapping on.
You're just getting your point across, Gary. That's all.
I was trying to do that, and again, yourself on the first day, and then Adam throughout the period. It was because that's the other thing too. That's a pro, is having a professional there who just go, you need to go back a sentence, because at times you don't realize you don't enunciate something correctly, or you say a word incorrectly. You haven't even realized that you've said it incorrectly, but to have someone watching your script and picking up that's not the right, because I might have said he instead of him, for example, and it really needed to be a him instead of a he with the way the sentence worked, but the wrong words just popped out. That was really beneficial. I was really, really super pleased. And I'm not going to give you prices away, but honestly, the value for money, folks, is so high. It's literally a no-brainer.
Thank you. That is so good. That's all I need to hear today. Thanks so much, Gary. No, that's really made my day. I'm so happy to hear that, because my team's aim is to, you have a wonderful experience, and then the end product is something that you really love, and obviously that your listeners are going to love, so I pride myself on having the best audiobooks around. So, and working with people like yourself, I'm so lucky in my job that I get inspiring people like you to work with. So, but anyway, this is about you, not about me. So thank you for that. You are an incredibly positive and motivating guy, and that's definitely reflected in your words and your narration for Yes for Success. In fact, so much so that it had me writing down answers to the thought-provoking questions throughout the book while editing. I had to remember I'm actually working here when your words prompted me to think of my life and my goals. So well done on that.
Yes.
And the book is incredibly engaging. And this is also reflected in its debut on Amazon at number 6 and the audiobook on Audible at number 19. So congratulations to you, Gary. So and why did Yes for Success come about?
Well, it came about because, in fact, I've been facilitating an in-person program for 13 years, coming into 14 years now in 2024. And I'd had an online program since 2023 based on the fact that I'd had at that time, about 5,500 in-person attendees to sometimes a full day program. Sometimes I only had half a day to work with clients to do it. And the feedback was overwhelming. And I guess we tapped into this issue that most people get someone that having a vision is going to be useful for them, and then having some sort of plan as to how to put that vision into action would also be useful. But what I discovered is most people, despite knowing that, have no clue how to do it. But conceptually, they go, this is a good thing to do, but on a personal level, how do I actually do that? So yeah, I went about creating a program that can do it. Again, testing it with that many people. And the outcome, and this is really important, there is no predisposed outcome. It's a step-by-step process to enable people to very clearly articulate and identify their unique version of what success means for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some key elements there's 6 key elements that I help people to consider as to what that harmonizing might look like, so that they have their own definition. So your definition of life harmony is going to be different to mine, and that's 100% okay, because it's unique. And just giving some people a pathway to do that, because I guess over time, and really it was around about when the Gallup State of the Workplace report came out again last year, which is now 12 years in a row that research has occurred, and it's global. Yeah. And it indicated that on a global perspective, 77% of employees were disengaged to degree to high degree.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. And in countries like America, 18% of employees are actively disengaged, meaning they are consciously taking action that they know is detrimental to their employer.
That's shocking.
In Australia, it's 11%, right? Now, there are some reasons caused by poor leadership, which is a catalyst for Disruptive Leadership Matters, and poor cultures. But given this data has been consistent for 12 years globally, right, irrespective of religious background, political persuasions as to how the country's run, this data is consistent across country to country. And it's moving about 1% either way from one year to the next. So it might be 22% engaged one year, 23% the next, and so on and so forth. But that's been 12. And I'm like, you know what? It's not just the leadership. Now, an interesting stat that your listeners might not agree with because of the fact that they're listening to a podcast like this, but the average number of books CEOs are reading is 60, reading or listening to, right?
Okay.
The average number of books the average person is reading is 1, or in fact, it's actually less than 1. Yeah, less than 1. And if they are reading a book, it's nearly 95% likely it's a romance novel. So they're not doing any self-development. And when I do so much development work in organizations, a lot of people have handed over responsibility for their development to their organization.
Yeah.
Their organization's responsibility to develop them. I call it the mental model. Most people call it the mindset that they're bringing. You never learn as well when you think it's someone else's responsibility for your learning. Yeah. So
that's kind of a culture though, isn't it? Like that's embedded. I could say from my background, they facilitate these workshops and whatever to improve you. That's, I guess, why I would think, I don't really necessarily, I'm just thinking about my old self and the way I used to think, this is why I wouldn't want to go and do anything. I'm getting it all through work.
That's right. And the challenge with that is what if something goes wrong with work, or what if work's actually developing you for the wrong things that you, and so many,
they're not doing that.
Well, exactly right. So I think the high stats of nearly 8 out of 10 people being disengaged with their workplace, again, leadership and culture has got a lot to do with that. but equally the fact that people are not steering their own career ship. They're not steering it. They're not developing. They're more interested in getting entertained rather than putting in the work to develop themselves. So right at the very start with Yes for Success, and I really passionately believe this, right? I share about my experience with my first son. So your listeners, I've got 5 children, ranging now from 24 years of age down to 13, 4 boys and a girl. We had the pigeon pair to start with. So boy, girl, then boy, 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 to get 5, I think I said. But Michelle, my wife, she got stuck with Liam when she was at birth, 17 hours of labor. All of a sudden, the institution's an emergency Caesar, off we go. 15 minutes later, after he's been wrapped up and his little scrawny face, and Michelle gets a quick cuddle, and then to me, because he'd been checked and his thumbs up, and then I get taken out of the room with him to Michelle's room while they now have to, put Michelle back together after the Caesar. And they said, right, we'll be back in 5 minutes. So I knew I was going to be a new father, but I wasn't expecting to actually be on my own with my new son. So, I'm looking at him. Now, when I'm looking, he's all scrunched up faces. Was he extraordinary? Of course he was, right? And then each of the next 4 were all Caesars, and I knew this was going to happen. And so I was prepared. And for each of them, I knew what I was going to say. And with Liam, I sang to him the courage that is inbuilt in his genes and all of that. So I was telling him who he's going to become. And then I did exactly the same with the other 4 when they came along, because they were absolutely extraordinary, and that I needed to foster that. My experience of life is that even by childhood, in many cases, which is very sad, a lot of people don't believe they're extraordinary anymore. And certainly by adulthood, they don't believe it. And that's what Yes for Success is about, helping people reconnect with what they were born with. And I need to give another extreme example of a good friend of mine, Nick Gerhardt. Now, Nick Gerhardt lives in Austin, Minnesota in the USA, and he was actually born dead.
Whoa.
Yeah. And he was revived after being dead for some time, not too long, thankfully, but he was revived after birth.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So when he was given to his mother, and she nursed him for the first, how extraordinary was he?
Yeah.
Right. Now, a year later, they discovered he has cerebral palsy. Right. And he's in his 30s now, and he is able to walk and everything, but he twists, and life's a very strong. He's one of the most inspiring people I know because of the way that he just attacks life. Right.
Yeah.
And he's someone that he's living an unbelievably extraordinary life as an adult with what most of us would consider a really significant disability. He calls it a different ability. And he equally advocates that everyone has infinite abilities, including able-bodied people, right? So I guess they're the two extremes of this, my son and what Nick was born, and everyone sort of fits somewhere in between, I guess. And yeah, Yes for Success is about trying to reignite that for people. And for those of us that are parents, to use these tools to persuade our own children that they are extraordinary too, is, if there's a small dent in the universe, I can do that. And look, I know you sort of mentioned the numbers before, but for Audible to actually announce us, and I say us because we work together on this project, as a hot new release when we are self-published. I mean, I think your audience needs to know that you are producing books that the big machine has helped us in a pretty important, powerful way when the book was released, actually identifies as a hot new release. So, I thank you for that, and Adam for that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so pleased. And, I obviously pride myself on making really good audio. I've been working in audio a long time, so it's really important to me that, all those extraneous sounds and the breaths and whatever are out of there, and you're sounding engaging, but the content has got to be there. And, you've been working on this sort of theme for most of your life. You talk about not only your son's birth and the other births and how people are extraordinary, and we forget about that when we're, once we're old, we're just like, and even more so, we're shy and really don't believe in our abilities because, you live your life and you get all this feedback and you self beat up, and you don't think you're good enough. But Yes for Success really, it was so weird when I was editing. I had to really say, I actually had a notepad and was writing down things, and then would sit there and let like half an hour go while I fill in what you were asking me, thinking, oh, Gary wants his book done. So I had to keep going back to it. But it was good. It was good. And that's what actually inspired me to reach out to you for your 10X workshop. So that's what you guys are doing now. You're a 10X business coach. And I did one session with that. And again, like I've been thinking for a while, and I've worked with quite a few authors that talk about leadership, and a few people have said to me, you've got to get out there and not hide behind your audio books, even though you do a great job and that's your passion. But people want to know about you. And I've kind of been mulling this over for like a year or whatever. Thinking, what am I going to do? I'm just going to do my audiobooks. But then I do this course, right? 1 hour with Gary. And the next day I put up that video of me saying, g'day, I'm Simone Feiler and how the heck did you get that out of me? How did that happen? I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah, but I'm a catalyst, right? You already had that in you. And you did, right? It just needed a spark. It just needed someone to light the match. But it was already, and that's exactly the outcome. And it was, the reception was brilliant.
Yeah.
People want to know. Now, I mean, you'd be surprised, maybe you wouldn't be, but there's some hate that I've received for what I do.
Right.
And
well, there's always haters.
That's right.
That's you're supposed to know that you've made it once the haters come along.
But it is true. It is true. And look, I only feel sadness for them, to be brutally honest. I mean, I really do. I just feel so sad. And look, they can be very vicious. They really can. But I actually still feel sad for them, because the brutal reality is that the hate is a sign of success. I mean, it's a pity our world works like that. But when you're training yourself to just see the little wins every day, and it might be I got up before the sunrise, I did my exercise straight away, I've done some study or research before I started my work, I ate properly. I mean, I saw an elderly person at a bus stop when I was walking, and I caught their eye and I said hello, and they said hello back. And maybe I might be the only voice they'll hear all day that's actually engaged there. Like, that's a win. And when you train your mind that way, and you start to see the beauty in the world that's actually right in front of your nose, it does, I don't know, it builds up your capability to deal with the dark side of success, if you want to call it that. And look, I don't get hate like Taylor Swift, for example. Some of the stuff that gets thrown at that woman, like, it's just incredibly vicious.
Yeah, and she would have to shake that off.
Oh, I'm sure she does, but it's like, I guess when you get to her level, not claiming to be at Taylor Swift's level.
Not yet.
Not.
But it's true. It's about a mindset and about training your mindset, and I think this sort of thinking is certainly much more out in the open than it was back in the 80s when I grew up. I don't know whether it's infiltrating to everybody, but a lot of the people that I meet, are starting to maybe meditate or just think positively, trying to see the silver lining in the bad situations that they come through. But you facilitate helping people do this. So what a wonderful job. When was it that you thought, I'm going to help people do this?
Honestly, it was when I became a suburban football coach at the age of, I actually took on the job when I was still 26, but when the season started, I was 27. And it was the club was only 4 years old, but the standard was terrible. And very quickly, Simone, I just realized that I had much more than football in my hands. I had this opportunity to actually shape young with vision and values. And I grew up with them. They grew up with me. We did some extraordinary things. We created an unbelievably professional club, and which really got tested when one of the players got his neck broken in a game.
Wow.
In 1999, but despite being amateur, the way, and with no money, like literally we ran off the smell of an oily rag. We knew where the keys were to the gate to get the ambulance right onto the field. We had people who were properly qualified in first aid. So the first aid that we gave him meant that some of his spinal cord was in fact saved, and he is an incomplete quadriplegic who can actually walk, and he's an incredible human being, Jason. That's a long time ago now, Simone, and I guess there are so many people, and as they become, they're partners and children, and that I'm still very closely connected too, that the lesson of the ripple effect that you can actually have on people. I guess that was just such a beautiful experience that it just made me realize, partly because some of the stuff I share in the, well, not partly, largely because of some of the trauma I went through myself.
Yeah.
As a very young man, where there really wasn't any proper support available at the time. And I sort of just somehow navigated my way through that. I had lots of love, but I was doing some really dumb things and people kept forgiving me, and I actually needed to get a smack.
Yeah.
I was actually doing some things as my way of screaming out for help, but people just kept forgiving me for what I was going through as a result of the trauma that I'd gone through. So how the hell I navigated my way without something tragic happening is still, who knows. So,
But that's because you're supposed to be here doing this, Gary.
yeah, well,
You mightn't have been doing this had you have not gone through a tragedy, which people can read about in Yes for Success. But, it's kind of built you going through all of that, to know all of that, to be able to share that with maybe other people aren't going through such major hardship, or people are going through worse,
well, that is 100% true. I do believe that to be true. That I don't believe that my fate was ever. Things happen. The world happens, right? That happened to me. I was able to make some sense out of it, but actually, it was afterwards when my father had cancer, and I was the only one at home out of the 11 children, and I nursed him for 2 years with mum, and had to make some big choices during that period, Simone, about, do I go overseas where all my friends were going? And that would mean my relationship with my wife now would have ended, and we wouldn't be married and wouldn't have 5 kids, all that sort of stuff. And I did choose to stay and nurse Dad. And whilst I didn't want to see my father pass when I was still quite young, 22 to 24, that was, I made the best of it. And it was like, that's sort of when I started to realize maybe I could see some sense in it all, I guess. And maybe my purpose is to help other people equally make some sense, and the power of vision. And trauma happens to everyone in various degrees. And I don't think there's a human being that gets to be an adult that hasn't experienced some of it.
Yeah.
But I did get exposed to a model that I really believe in, and that's it's a yin and yang model. And so if something is really crap, don't make it worse, but don't pretend it's not crap if it actually is crap. Like, acknowledge this is crap. That sort of
yeah, yeah.
But don't make it worse. Like, don't make it worse than it is. But the other side of the yin and yang is always have the faith that you will end up better because of it. That at some point a lesson will emerge to make you a better person. So much so you will look back at a point in time in the future and say, the gift that gave me has made me the person that I'm happy to look in the mirror at, even though actually on many levels I wish they didn't happen, but it did. And the gift it gave me has actually made me a better person.
Yeah, that's so true.
And so, having learned that at a relatively age, honestly, Simone, when those events happen again, which they do, I already know, okay, I don't know what it is yet, but I know it's an amazing that how different that makes the new trauma when it comes, because you already know, okay, I want this, I didn't ask for it, but I'm here now. I'm actually going to, there's going to be a day where I'm going to learn something about myself that I didn't know. And I just believe that to be true.
That's very wise to be at that, understanding that that's how you can take trauma and work it to the best of the worst.
Yeah. I mean, if we're alive, because it can definitely take you the other way.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, that you were on, you have to really pull your head in after a while, though. And it takes gumption, and also, I guess, your support group around you. I mean, you talk about, your success team in Yes for Success. So it's important to have good people around you that lift you up rather than tear you down. It's all in Yes for Success. And like I said, you'll be writing down notes and making your best life. But you're living a great life. And, you're married, you've got 5 children, you've run 11 marathons, you've been a coach, you're a 10X business coach, licensee, you're an entrepreneur, you own your own business, organizations that matter, written 5 books and more. You have got this fulfilled, jam-packed life. How do you fit it all in?
Commit to your life. I mean, I've never watched Game of Thrones.
What?
I'm not bagging Game of Thrones, but I've never watched it. There are very limited series that I like. So I just, that's what I don't have. Right. I don't spend my time detained like maybe other people. Maybe that means at times I'm lost in conversation because I can't contribute or whatever. I mean, it's not that I don't follow any. I mean, currently, our family has always followed Survivor, but just due to a whole bunch of current commitments, I've said, well, I can't. That's one of my sacrifices at this point in time. I can't watch that series. So I'm not. There's been plenty of those decisions, and as you know, with all authors, no book gets written by sitting back and twiddling your thumbs. It's all sometimes 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You might be back up 3 hours later doing the work, and you've got to do the work, as you know yourself with your own business.
Yeah.
I mean, starting in Brisbane and then Melbourne, and are you moving to the other states as well over time?
I've got all the capital cities, so I've trademarked all capital cities. Yeah. And I've got a studio in Sydney I work with, and in Melbourne with Adam, and I've got Audiobook Australia. I do have plans, and that's why I've joined your 10X business coaching course, because I'm hoping to, because I get so involved in just doing the work that I'm doing, and I do have ideas, but I kind of like leave them on the back burner, and that's why I've engaged you, Gary, to help me get to that next level. That's what I want to do. So I have ideas. And yeah, I did watch Game of Thrones, but I don't spend too much time on telly. And I try to remove apps like TikTok and Twitter and whatever off my phone, so I don't get engaged in that. But honestly, I'm fairly self-motivated to, work, because I love what I'm doing. I love meeting people like you, hearing amazing stories, both fiction and non-fiction, and learning. Who would have thought, when you first contacted me with Disruption Leadership Matters, I just actually started doing my podcast, during COVID, because I couldn't have anyone in the studio. And I thought, I've just started this business not so long ago, I think 3 years or whatever. And now it's all going to end.
Yeah.
So I started contacting all my authors and saying, hey, I'm going to do a podcast with you via Zoom. And so I did that. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that you've come into my life and that I can learn some more from you.
Well, I am very passionate about small businesses and people blowing up their businesses in a really positive, constructive way. I mean, again, your product is unbelievably awesome, and the evidence is there. We got the hot new release together with my book, and no doubt there's been other authors getting that same level of success, and all of this work's always a labor of passion, I guess, and to have someone guiding you like yourself who is passionate, it just can't not work. When you learn some of the skills, I guess, that we're teaching you through the 10X journey, it's like, you're going, I already know this. It's just now I'm doing it right.
Yeah. Well, I guess some of them are like, there were things that hour that I did. Seriously, it seemed like 10 minutes. So I was like, what the heck? It's over already. But so many points to action that I thought I could do following it up with that video. But also some of the information that you gave about marketing. I was so lucky I sat in on the marketing one. I'm looking forward to tonight and tomorrow night. But yeah, it's so useful and inspiring. So I'm really glad I'm doing it, and I'm expecting to, hopefully blow up.
Folks can keep checking out that business coaches, the 10X Business Coaches Down Under series. We've got series 2 launching on the 28th of February, and there'll be another series in April. 4 more series this year so far, that we might do more.
I highly recommend them. So how can people find you?
Find me on LinkedIn's really easy at Gary Ryan, or at orgsthatmatter.com, or at 10X businesscoachesdownunder.com is another place to find us as well.
And what about your TEDx talk? There's so many things that I've got written down that I want to talk to you about. Like, we could go on forever, but I'm sure you're busy. But you did your TEDx talk. How did that come about? And how was that for you?
Well, that was in the really early days of TEDx, and that was actually through a graduate called Stefan at the Katsanavakis or something like that. So I'm sorry, I brutalized your name. he was running something for the group, and he asked if I could do his TEDx talk at the National Australia Bank here in Melbourne at Docklands, at not the building they're in now, the previous one. And I said, sure. I didn't even really know what it was. It was just, to me, it was just a speech. And they said, oh, can we record it? And I said, of course, it's going to be for TEDx. So yeah, that was in 2010.
That's very cool. Everybody would like to have that opportunity.
We didn't even have the red dot back then.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really.
Now, where do I stand?
So, but look, that was the early version of Yes for Success, actually.
Yeah, well, you talked about the elastic band.
Yeah, mental models and elastic band. It's a good metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great metaphor. And that was one of my other questions. How did you come up with that?
Well, I learned it, and it's a good story because I learned it from Peter Senge, who's from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he's one of the world leaders in organizational learning. Okay. So I first came across him in 1995 when I read his book, The Learning Organization. But then I discovered that his mentor is a gentleman called Robert Fritz. And Robert Fritz is from the arts, actually a song composer and a music director and a film director. Somehow, I still don't quite know the full story about how those two met, but Robert Fritz taught the elastic band metaphor to Peter Senge. And Peter Senge then went and did the research to see if this has got something in it, which it did. And so the arts informed academia. I love that.
Isn't that cool?
It's so freaking cool.
That really is.
Yeah, because especially one of my sons a performing artist as well. And I just love that
Creativity.
That diversity. We talk a lot about diversity, but that diversity of thinking that sits behind that elastic band metaphor. So I go to long lengths to try to make sure I recognize both Robert Fritz and Peter Senge for that.
Well, I guess, that's part of your business, is bringing out that creativity that you've obviously done the background research on, so that people can have an income from that and feel really fulfilled. And you'll find that in Yes for Success on Audible and on Gary's website, orgsthatmatter.com. You are a champion. Thank you so much for doing your book with me and for joining me on my podcast today, Gary Ryan.
You're welcome, Simone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining the Simone Feiler podcast. What's your story? Contact Simone for a chat at brisbaneaudiobookproduction.com.